Looks like we're live. Well, first and foremost, welcome everyone to our GradLab webinar entitled What's the Big Picture of Graduate Research? My name is Joseph Green, and I'm the Chair of Graduate Programming for IEEE-HKN. I'm honored to introduce our speaker, Dr. Hulya Kirkici, who will use her 30-plus years of academic experience to offer insights into how graduate research can further your own career as well as your respective fields as a whole. Over the ensuing 20-minute presentation, we will explore why we do academic research as graduate students, how to contextualize our progress, and how we can translate our academic skills to do other things. I encourage all of you to stay until the end, where we'll have a live Q&A session to answer all of your pressing questions. You can post your questions throughout this webinar in the comment section of Hopin. With that aside, let's get started. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Kirkici.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome and great introduction. And I am so happy to be here and presenting my presentation. As Joe mentioned, I'm a professor and chair of electrical and computer engineering at the University of South Alabama. And I was inspired by Joe to do this presentation based on a presentation that I have given in the past to a university. Thank you, Joe, for that encouragement for me to do this. I am a governor at large of IEEE-HKN Board of Governors, and I also chair the HKN Alumni Engagement Committee. And those are the two important boards that I actually serve and engage with students and try to help the students in their academic careers. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce my background to you all simply because Joe said that I have 30 plus years of academic experience. Really, it's more than that, including my elementary school and high school and college and graduate school, etc. So I'm quite old, but I started very young. I was born in Turkey, and those are my parents, and with their encouragement and support that I am where I am today. And I completed my bachelor's and master's degrees in physics at the Middle East Technical University in Ankara, and then came to the United States to do my PhD in physics, and circumstances allow me to really go into electrical engineering. And finally, I was able to make the transition and finish my PhD in electrical engineering from Polytechnic University in New York. Polytechnic University now is the School of Engineering of NYU, New York University. I have spent 24 plus years at Auburn University started as a postdoctoral researcher, and then went through the ranks as the first woman, a tenure track hired in ECE, and the first and only one so far went through the academic ranks at Auburn University in electrical and computer engineering. And the most importantly, and I took a couple of sabbatical leaves to explore other opportunities in research and find ways to help students, help my graduate students, help my department, and help the research community with my research. Those were one at NASA, Marshall Space Flight Center, and the other one is Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I also hold a Presidential Administrative Fellowship at Auburn University that is an academic administrative position to learn the university's workings and become maybe academic leader in administration. I really didn't have any plans to become a department chair, but my experience at Auburn University as an administrative fellow led me to take this wonderful job that I truly, truly enjoy. And simply because I get to work with all sorts of students, not just graduate students, just like what I did as a faculty member, but also with undergraduate students, and in fact, high school students in research and other opportunities. So that's a great work. Of course, it comes with the benefits as well as the pain sometimes that I work through long hours. So this is where I am now at the University of South Alabama. It's a wonderful campus. It's very green and very new buildings, and it's a fairly young university compared to Auburn University. College of Engineering 3 years ago celebrated its 50th anniversary of establishment. So it is fairly young compared to other universities in the United States. So the presentation that I gave to a university was an invited presentation as a distinguished department chair. And through that, and I asked the question, what do you all want me to present? And I didn't really get any clear answer. They simply said, we really want to learn about your university. And I thought it was not just enough. So, and I thought, well, what do we do as a department chairs? And we look at the bigger picture. And that reminded me that my dad always said, you need to look at the bigger picture. It's not always black and white. You need to consider everything. So I said, you're right. And I really should talk about that. So in my daily work these days, I look at the electrical and computer engineering impact on educational programs, students, on research, and other related issues involving undergraduate and graduate students in research, presentation of their work at conferences, graduate research and presentations, honors program, and other collaborative work that we do. I also look at what the future is for engineers, especially electrical and computer engineers and the technology. And remember, being a professor for 25 plus years and then becoming an administrator and looking at the bigger and bigger picture, you realize that the students that we work every day are the future generation technology makers. And those are the people that the engineers, those are the people that will shape our lives. So those are the people who will develop the new technologies and new comfort and new tools that we every day use. So, and academia is not just a research incubator, but also the technology, also for the development and training of the technology professionals. So that is where I come from, and that is how I these days look at it. But so when you come to the graduate school and when you start to decide, even in high school, which school to go and what to do, there's always a decision to make. And you say, how do I decide? What do I do? And I do that every day. And I found this cartoon based on my physics background. And I remember Schrodinger's cat. And in this particular cartoon, the cat says, well, I wish I was an electron and I could be in two places at once. And meaning that the cat wants to sleep all the time as well as cat wants to eat, right? So this is being in the same place at the same time and doing two different things. And yes, we can do that as people. So what is the bigger picture in academia? And when you think about the academic work, then you kind of remember, what did I do in my life all these 30 plus years? And I was an undergraduate student in Turkey doing my physics degree. And I just said, I want to do research. I want to be a professor. I had no idea what that meant. I really, truly had no idea what that meant. And I said, I'm going to go to the United States and do my graduate work. Still, I had no idea. And while I was doing my master's degree and I wanted to study lasers, and which I did, and I understood how they work and I wrote a paper. But then, and I said, I really want to build lasers. When I came to the United States and I picked my university, I didn't pick my professor, I picked the topic first. And I said, I want to find a professor who is going to do research in lasers. And I did. But usually it is not the case. Once I started doing that, and I was buried in it, and I had no idea what to do next, and etc. And then I graduated, and then I got a job as a postdoctoral research, and that was completely different than what I was doing. But then I still was able to use my skills that I learned building excimer lasers. And those skills were pulse power engineering, understanding plasma physics, understanding vacuum insulation, and I used those knowledge to do my postdoctoral work. And after that, and I said to my supervisor, I said, I would like to get a tenure track job. And it just happened that there was a tenure track position open at Auburn University, electrical engineering department, and I joined. But things were not the same as it was in graduate school as a postdoc or a graduate assistant. And in all of those cases, the projects were given to me, and projects were already in a start of something, and I add to it. But now I had to fight the tenure and promotion, and I had to bring funding, and I had to create knowledge, and I had to publish. So this cartoon is really realistic. Now I'm getting closer to my retirement. I feel like I can do any research that I want to, right? So that's how the real work. So looking at that one, and I ask myself, why do we do academic research? Academic research is really, really important. It allows someone to learn something new. It builds confidence. But most importantly for us, for professors, we learn the technologies firsthand and pass on that knowledge to our students and train them to do better than us, and help them to understand the world, understand the technology, understand the design, understand the development of research. And professors sometimes lose track of that. Professors get into a daily grind, and they want to fulfill the obligations of that research grants and continuously um, encourages students to do what that research is supposed to bring to the professor, not to the graduate student. So why do graduate students do research? They want to do graduate work or research to get a better job, challenge themselves to do better, and maybe they are interested in learning, exploring, and understanding the most recent issues, right? So, and you keep working and working and think about it. Well, who cares? Sometimes you do say that, and sometimes you say, well, my colleagues care, my professor care, my mother care, my father cares, and all those kind of notions. You go through all of them. So now that you started, how will I start my graduate student career? So you decide, just like I did, that you are going to be a professor one day, and you look for a university, and you look for a professor, you look for a reputation, and we all look at the university's rankings. Based on that, we apply to our favorite graduate school. You get admitted to graduate program, and then you select your research advisor and learn about your project. Is that really what you wanted to do? And once you decide that you found your project, this is something that you will enjoy, and you start questioning yourself, is this really what I wanted to do? And is this really fulfilling my dreams? And sometimes the answer is no. And in that moment, you continue working on the project, present results, write articles, and move on. Is that really what you wanted to do? You still ask yourself. And maybe it's not. How many times have you questioned yourself? So you keep doing and doing and doing until you find the answer. And no one is going to answer that question for you except you. Only way to do is that you question yourself continuously and improve yourself continuously and find new challenges and challenge yourself continuously to do better. And choosing research project. And how do you choose your research project? You got into the program, you go to your professor and you say, well, I want to work with you. And the professor says, well, it doesn't work that way. This is how it works. And then he continues, well, there's not much difference. And if you want to do any work and you need to do what I tell you to do. Yes, that's what we do. Unfortunately, that's what professors say. And you have to do what I tell you. And sometimes there is no money in it and you don't get anything out of it. And they tell you to take a part-time job. And most cases in the United States, you do get funding from the project that your professor is doing. And it is in many cases, it's really good money, but it's not compatible in relation to the job that you would have gotten as an engineer. But what is the reward? Better researcher, and you improve your analytical skills, you become a better designer, you improve your understanding of the world, you become a better social worker. And we never think about being a social worker, but what we do in our technology, once we finish the basic research, that basic research turns into a product. That product becomes the use for the community and for society. So yes, you become a social worker and you work for the society. And so this is not the big picture of graduate research. Basically, you go in there, you have a recipe, and you bake it, and you pop out the results, and you start to publish. And somebody says, you look at other people, what they have done, and then at the end, your paper gets rejected, and then you start crying. It happens. It happened to me more than once. But what you do is you continue and pushing, and why that particular intellectual property or scholarly work that you created is not up to the expectations of the reviewers. And you ask that question to yourself, and then you go back and you redo it and continue adding more knowledge and adding that knowledge to the outlets and disseminate your knowledge. Okay. So the question that Joe asked me is, what do my research contributions mean for my career, field, and personal skills? First of all, your research contribution is another incremental work of your advisor's original work. You are the storyteller of that work, okay? And you learn from that incremental work. That is your sandbox. Now you're ready for doing better things once you become free. Look for similar work by others. Search for opportunities to collaborate. Visit other research groups and facilities. And what you did for your professor could never be your basic research anymore. That was your sandbox. You have to build upon that. Your professor owns that idea. You added to it. Continue to read not only scientific journals, but also science and technology policies. You learn what the people that we elected to Congress are deciding and wanting to do in research, how much funding they are giving. Is it valuable to the society? Is it valuable to the technology? Is it valuable to environment? Is it valuable to the society? Look for research projects that are not going to require a lot of resources, but still will impact the society. Those are the most important ones. When I was a graduate student, I was so interested in X-ray lasers. And those are the lasers that do really good work these days. But those X-ray lasers were pretty expensive to set up and pretty expensive to maintain and expensive to do research and required multiple investigators and big facilities. And my advisor said, Hulya, you learn the same science, same knowledge, same engineering by doing a laser project that can be done in a small plasma chamber, small discharge, and 2 laser mirrors. You do not need to set up a multi-million-dollar research center to be able to do laser research. And he was right. He was correct. And my research was very, very small budget, but I have learned a great deal of it, from it. So get involved in professional societies, attend conferences, make new connections, and expand your horizon. Find topics that will be disruptive or lead to disruptive technologies. It's so important that you do not repeat yourself and keep doing the incremental work. You should never do incremental work. It's okay to do incremental work, but don't keep making this a habit. You find something that is original every single time that will add value. Get a hobby. I'm really not good at doing hobby. I do have hobbies, but very little time to do anything. I don't dedicate your life to work, and that's me. I do dedicate my life to work, but have fun. So as a graduate student, I did have fun. I worked really hard, and I played really hard. That's what always I tell my students. You find time for yourself and to do fun things with your colleagues, with your friends, and those friendships and fun times will never be leaving you. They will be always with you. And then the big picture of graduate research. It is for you to explore new ideas, learn new tools and methods, develop analytical skills, practice doing scientific research. That is graduate school. Never think about your graduate project will be your focus area forever. You got to change it. Expand on that to explore other problems to solve, but make sure those are valuable to the community as much as to you. And remember, there is a whole world of research out there. Many technologies that we use these days are initiated by research at academic institutions, developed by industry, and driven by public policies and use. Research is cyclic, less fundamental and more developmental in our research, and the developments are more incremental and less disruptive. So I was reading an article that come across this phrase. More incremental work means it may take longer to make those key breakthroughs that push science forward more dramatically. It is true. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and add small value to it, it's not going to change the world dramatically. So I was reading another article that says, need to rethink how we conduct scientific research in order to better facilitate disruptive work and harness innovation to take on humanity's most pressing problems like climate change and space exploration. So there are big challenges in environmental issues, especially climate change. And I was reading another article recently about how the endangered species our number of them are increasing every day, and we're losing animals, and they're changing, and we're losing them. And same thing with humanity. We're just are being pushed to live places that we don't want to live. Look at California, look at the rest of the world and different places, the flooding and landslides and storms and those kind of things are part of the climate change. So we need to be mindful of those, and we need to be able to find solutions to those. We are engineers, we can do anything, right? So what are the disruptive technologies? Really, there are very few of them. One is the Thomas Edison's patent for the incandescent light bulb. And from burning wood or burning candles for centuries, we finally had electricity, and we learned how to use electricity to have lighting. And another disruptive technology, and again, lighting technology, is the fluorescent lamps. And then the next step of the lighting technology, disruptive technology, is being able to engineer uh, light emitting diodes as light sources and making them more powerful and more luminescent. And another disruptive technology is invention of transistor. It changed our understanding of, or it changed our lives. We were able to build computers and electronic devices smaller and smaller and with more memories. And another disruptive technology is information theory. We can send information in zeros and ones and without easily, and that led to internet. And that's how we have the internet, and that's how we have this presentation over virtual platform. Other incremental advances and few major changes are artificial intelligence. Really, to me, it is artificial intelligence is incremental advance until we figure out how to use it intelligently and how to use it in more socially responsible manner. Nuclear fusion, again, long time we were trying and trying and trying. And then gene editing. Maybe that's not a incremental advance, but gene editing, I know nothing about biology, so I'm going to leave that to the biologist to answer. So for us to deliver social impact, our ideas have to flow from abstract concepts through a chain of IEEE professionals, from academics, researchers, to solutions, to developers, to applications engineers. We need to develop a complete chain to efficiently deliver our ideas to the benefit of society. This is from one of my colleagues at the IEEE volunteer community, and he is correct. So I think going back to my background, and I started with lasers, the one that you are seeing, those circles, that is the laser that I built. It is an excimer laser using both flowing gas technology that is being used in the dye lasers, as well as excimer. And using that knowledge, and I worked on a couple of projects. One is developing UV light sources for environmental pollution protection, and also use the same technology to look at light propagation through plasmas for free space propagation without distortion of the laser pulses through plasma environment in ionosphere or any form of plasma formation around the airplanes or satellites or high altitude vehicles. And that work also led me to join NASA to look at electric power systems in space, and using that pulse power engineering as well as plasma physics. And we were able to help the shuttle program to redesign and rethink their auxiliary electric power unit and how that can be managed and without breakdown, without maintenance, and without minimal interference and insulation. And that work really is the fundamental work that I did, and that was the way that I got the IEEE fellowship recognition. And so how did I get there? Really, this work started with the last work started with one of my colleagues, meeting them at a conference and discussing my research, and he had this particular problem of insulation, and I put my head together with him, and we come up with solutions. So you get involved in professional societies. That is so important. And I know many of you are HKN members, and those that keep up with that. Keep your professional presence, professional activities continues and actively engage in conferences and other places. And with that, this is the, I think, last slide that is I'm passing on to you from my PhD advisor. And he always said, have a plan. It is never too late to make a plan. Start now. Use the resources that are available to you, and that includes coworkers, friends, and others. Believe in you. Believe in what you are doing. That's the most important thing. Hard work. Work harder than others. Maybe not true, but work smarter than others. Promote yourself. Tell someone, your supervisor, your friends, or your family about your achievements, skills, and ambitions. Tell your story every step of the way. Tell them what you are doing, how you are doing, what problems you have, what accomplishments you have, what ambitions you have, where you want to go, what you want to do. They will help you. They will always help you. And with that, my my current hobby is to take care of these two spoiled cats every single day. With that, thank you so much. And you can reach me at this email address, and it's all lowercase.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the presentation, Dr. Kirkici. It was very fascinating to learn more about your background as well as your journey going from graduate student to now chair of the ECE department. We do have a couple of questions for you, so if you're ready, I'd love to get started.
Of course.
Sounds good. So as a first question for you, one aspect that really jumped out to us was the diverse amount of backgrounds that you were able to traverse over the course of your academic career, going across not just different institutions, but different countries as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how your academic perspective shifted as you traveled from environment to environment, and how this shift helped you find yourself as a researcher?
Yeah, I think the most important part, jumping from different settings, is really the gave me different perspective, and I never forgotten my background, being a Turkish researcher, to being in America and following the American way of life and American way of education system. And it is really the way that you think about it. You merge those, you marry them, you take the best of everything that you experienced and use that towards the next step to help others. And that's what I did. And really, early on, you will be selfish, and I was, meaning that you will always think about your own research, and that comes first. It has to come first. Otherwise, you cannot excel in what you do. And if you cannot excel in what you do, then there's very little that you can help others to excel. And I'm gonna say this. One of my former professors, a colleague actually, I was at a conference in Turkey. I was invited to give this talk, and I was really struggling that I should have gone back to Turkey and helped the Turkish community in research. And he said, Hulya, we have so many researchers in Turkey. They are helping the current students. What we need is you to be out there and help the students here, and by exposing them to other countries, other cultures, other ideas. And it resonated. That is what I do, and I never turn away other people to when they have questions about anything.
That's fantastic. Thank you for your response. We have a question in the chat, which I'm going to open up a little bit, but this is a question inspired by Amy here. She's talking a lot about what do you recommend in terms of researching. There's very much this dichotomy at times between what you're passionate about. You identified a couple of very great and motivating passions at the end of your talk, but pragmatically also what is fundable, if you will, the hot topic or what those grant committees are looking for. So I guess, could you talk a little bit about mitigating these discrepancies, and how do you remain flexible enough in your research to keep getting funded without necessarily sacrificing your core ideology and goals for your research?
Excellent question. Excellent questions. I truly, when I was starting early on in my career, and I read as many solicitation about research projects as I read research articles, simply because, and I was trying to find a match to my interest, my passion, and what is being funded. And these days, I read as many political fundable research. What is Congress is funding? What is Office of Science and Technology is recommending? Why? Because I want to be able to mentor my faculty on those ideas and tell them this is the most profitable in terms of funding and in terms of delivering new technologies. So that's really it is hard to choose, and you really have to continuously read, and you will know, and you are the matchmaker for your research and your fundable research program.
When you go from having a more solid research direction inspired by your PI to having to navigate some more, we'll say, implicit forces like grant committees and the general flow of research, how do you secure your own research identity? How do you combine your interest background to come up with something new, interesting, and fundable?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So a lot of professors will tell you that that your research in graduate school is really not your research. In my case, that was not the circumstances. It's a sad kind of story, but my PhD advisor passed away immediately just before I finished my PhD. And so the research that I was working on, I was the sole owner of that. And I could have owned it and continue with that research, but I didn't. Simply because even though I loved working with lasers, and I built the lasers and they operated really well, and I proved the concept of making continuous wave excimer laser, and it wasn't really exciting anymore to me. And I learned from it, and I learned what I learned is that I learned how to do research, and I learned that what lasers can do, and I learned the components that goes into that particular project, understanding pulse power systems, understanding insulation, understanding plasma physics, understanding diagnostics. So these are the tools that I learned. So now I have those tools in my chest. And how do I use those tools to do new things? And that will be truly my product. That will be truly my baby, right? So that is how you do the transition. It is hard. And I do recommend all of you who are thinking about academic career to take a postdoctoral work, because that will give you an opportunity to do a bigger scale sandbox research. So that will be your next sandbox, next trial, to see if you really like what you're doing. And if you don't, then you still have time to find what you are passionate about. Some people find that passion in a year, some people takes 3 years, but it eventually does. You eventually will find that.
Can you talk a little bit, to keep it short, the difference between academic skills and academic accolades, and how you balance both of them over the course of a PhD or a graduate degree?
So what do you mean academic research and academic accolades? The awards and writing papers, etc.?
Oh, like taking steps to build skills, to build foundational knowledge versus taking steps to, say, publish a paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They really go hand in hand. You have to do both. Because if you don't, so somebody told me, if it is not written down, it didn't happen. So if you don't write your findings and it didn't happen, someone else is going to publish that, because you're not the only person thinking of this project, and you're not the only person that thinks about that problem. There's someone else is thinking about it. So you gotta continuously build and write. And my advice to my students, while you're doing the experiment, write it down, write it down. And you have to have your lab book, and you have to continuously write your ideas and your thinking and your tools that you develop, and go back to it over and over and over, and turn them into publishable media. And one way or another, you have to publish that. Otherwise, someone else is going to do that. And whatever you have learned is fine. It satisfies you, but it's not going to add you professionally to get a better job or to be acknowledged as an expert in that area.
Awesome. Thank you. We also have a question in the chat from Sylvie. From your perspectives as a woman engineer, how's the field changed from where you started to now?
Didn't. Sorry, but as a woman engineer, and I think it is still tough. Of course, I had an advantage. My advantage was I came from Turkey, and my age women in Turkey they were extremely liberal in terms of education. There was no uh, reason for a female student, a high school student, to choose engineering. In fact, it was encouraged. So as a in STEM field, I was continuously encouraged and really celebrated for doing that. And in school, same thing. And I was looked up to, being one of the very few women in my area. So when I early on in Turkey, there was the professors or engineers that make up were really close to 40% of engineers were women in Turkey. Compared to United States, the most developed country at the time in the world, it was still less than 20%. And today it is the same, hasn't changed. And this is with the funding that the government pours continuously to help women to choose engineering. I don't know what it is. As a society, I don't think we have accepted women being able to do what men do in engineering, and they get very little respect for the work. They don't get invited to give talks in conferences. They don't get invited to be on awards committees. They are not being asked to put their nomination for certain awards, and it is always difficult for women. And what I do at work is I continuously work with my female faculty to engage them, encourage them, find them contacts, find them research projects, and support them. But I do the same thing for women, for men. Men is more organic. It comes very quickly. For women, we have to work with them. It doesn't come organic. So what I'm saying is, in my case, it was more organic for me, and I really didn't need much support. In fact, I was surprised to know that there was an organization called Women in Engineering, and I was like, why? So yeah.
If you don't mind staying on this topic for a little bit more, I'd love to probe your experience a little bit. For any women or other underrepresented engineers in attendance or watching right now in the United States or in the international scale, do you have any advice for how they can help stand out and get ahead despite these challenging circumstances, or even just any motivation?
I think the motivation should be look for a mentor. And for me, and I was never shy asking questions. And in fact, when people reached out to me, and I wasn't shy, I just responded yes. And really, women don't do this. But that's why I encourage people to say, tell your story. Tell them what you're doing and ask for help. If they don't give you help, that's fine. But most likely they will help you. Don't assume that they are not going to. So if the question is not asked, the answer is always no. Remember that. You got to ask the question. And that question is, can you help me? I have this question. I have that problem. How can I go to the United States? How can I go to China to study? How can I go to Japan to be a researcher? Ask that question. They will answer.
Thank you. We have another question in the chat from Fatima. How can we go towards publishing books from publishing papers?
I don't know that, and I'm not really a fan of publishing books. To me, books are one of those things that are, you publish one piece of scholarly work, which is one book, and you can write 10 papers, and that will be 10 publications. So that's why I never been a fan of writing books. So I don't know how to do it, but there are a lot of publishers looking for content to publish books. To me, if book is a use to larger community, then one should write. Otherwise, one should not write book. Unfortunately, that's my view.
I know one organization that's been pretty good about encouraging, at least in optics, which is my immediate background, encouraging professors and other individuals to publish more succinct texts to keep people up to date with new and emerging fields has been SBIE. So I know they have a number of very cool texts as well as their own independent book publishing. That could be a good lead to check out and start getting a vibe of a couple of different ways to write these academic scripts outside of papers. But that's just from my own perspective. As another question, this might be our last question, unless there's more questions in the chat. I very much encourage anyone to comment if they have a pressing matter. Looking back to when you were in grad school, if you could go back and tell that Hulya one opinion or one perspective or one piece of information that you feel like would have direct ramifications on your career or at least getting through the challenges of grad school in general, what would be that piece of advice?
Don't cry as much as what you did.
Very fair.
So my research was experimental work, and really I was learning the tools. Really, I was learning how to machine. I'm a good machinist. I go and these days you have 3D printing and CND machines that do all the machining, but for us it wasn't. And I had to really manufacture my own parts to build the laser. So I went into the machine shop and I designed it and I machined it. But I would cry because that wasn't research. Why am I supposed to be doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I working with all these sorts of tools? But that was a good thing. So I should tell that young Hulya, don't cry. It's for your good.
You know, I really appreciate that. Thinking back, because I've done a little bit of experiments during my PhD too, it's kind of those small steps that you don't expect to account for much and tend to be frustrating because they're inhibiting you from your research that I found I learned the most from. Like the first time I built an optical setup, or the first time I succeeded after like 2 weeks to set up a spatial filter, for example, for a laser, like that gave me such tremendous insight. So I guess just as a follow-up question onto that, how do we take pride in the minor things we do in the PhD and keep our graduate research and keep that persistent mindset to keep a positive outlook?
It is very difficult. It's extremely difficult. At the time, we don't really realize it, but it's in some cases very discouraging, and you feel like you're not doing anything. And you see your colleague sitting next to you, working on a software that his professor developed and a code and plugging in numbers and popping up papers. And on the other hand, you're an experimentalist and you're still trying to set up your experiment. Each time you change a parameter, you have to have a new part. It is discouraging. I get it. But what is different with that person and you is different sets of skills, different types of tools that you have in your hand when you finish your school. You have to keep remembering this work is not for today, this work is for tomorrow. That's how you can keep going. And it's okay. It's okay for your colleague to do pop up 10 papers a year. No problem. But what you do is you're doing this for future. And so at some point you are going to publish your work. Maybe your paper will be just one, but it will be a most important paper. I'm not a prolific writer, and I don't have hundreds and hundreds of papers. And in fact, I had like three very basic papers, fundamental papers. Those are the groundbreaking work that I did for NASA for shuttle program. That is the seeds of what we know as um, electrification or transportation electrification, meaning aerospace, all electric aerospace vehicles. And that's what it was 20 years ago. That's the work I did, and that's the work that I got uh, recognized as an IEEE fellow. It takes just one. It takes just one to get you where you want to do. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. As one last question here before we wrap up, one aspect about grad school I hear pretty ubiquitously across multiple sources is it can be lonely from time to time, whether it's a small group or a niche research topic, or you're just doing something different than the rest of the lab. It can be a little bit of a solitary experience. So, especially as a grad student or as a new professor, how do you turn your research into a network? How do you find and make peers, and how do you find and make collaborations by your work?
Well, as a graduate student, ask your classmates to go to a bar and have a beer. And I know it's expensive to buy a beer, but buy them a beer, or have reasons. Just create reasons to have a party and bring a piece of cake to work and says, "Hey, let's have some cake," or bring some donuts and invite them to come and talk to you. And while they're there, and talk to them about your research, and or ask them to talk about their research as a graduate student. That's what we did. One of my classmates had a hamster. Whenever we felt like lonely, and we had a hamster's birthday, we had a birthday party for the hamster. We invited our professors and invited our other friends, and we talked about research. That's what you do, and you gotta do that. And same thing as a young professional. Remember, I went to school in New York, from a melting pot to Alabama. And I didn't even know where Auburn was when I was asked to interview at Auburn University. And I came to Auburn University to be a postdoc. And I said, well, I think and very southern, and there were very, very few number of international people. And I said to myself, I think I can take this place for 3 years. Look at me. I still live in Alabama, and you can make it. You make friends, you reach out, you gotta make the first attempt. Don't wait for others to make friends with you. You need to be the one.
I really appreciate that perspective. And I will say, in my own experiences, if you pick up baking, you can quickly become the most popular guy on your floor. It's like research you can eat. It's the best of all of the above. But I will admit that I've done the move of just like, oh no, I've baked too much. I guess I need to go talk to this lab I haven't met and offer up some homemade baked goods.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that. Finding reasons to connect is, I think, one of the most pertinent things about being in a grad program. And I really appreciate you encouraging all of us to try to think of creative ways and not being afraid to just reach out and ask. In my experience, a lot of graduate students are more than excited to spend time with you and talk.
Sounds great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this one. And I hope those who are in the session now or later on reviews this presentation will reach out to me again. just like any other professional, I'm very busy, but I'm never busy to not to respond to anybody's emails. And I will be happy to connect.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Hulya. This was a fantastic talk, and thank you to everyone in attendance or watching this after the fact. Definitely stay tuned. If you are part of our IEEE-HKN organization, keep your eye on the newsletter, and if not, subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have many more grad labs on the way this year. So excited to engage with you more in this content. And yeah, thank you again. It was a lot of fun and very informative. Have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.